I have been struggling with this for a while. I have a lot of non-Christian friends. It feels like we are sinning. And I've changed a lot in my life, especially over the last several years.
Did you say teach? You teach a lot? Is that what you said?
I changed a lot.
Oh, you
as
changed
a person.
a lot. Okay.
Yeah. And so over the last several years, I've made a lot of changes in my life, and it's kind of funny. The last Michigander that you talked to, talking about like celibacy and all that, and I actually, changed that about me and became celibate. And so I'm having a hard time with, my friends that, don't live a Christian, Christian life, and actually kind of scoff at mine a little. They like wonder why I live the way I do. But my main question is, because I'm sure you have other callers, sorry, is it's so hard for me to be happy for them when they have life events.
Right.
Like, oh, I'm moving in with my boyfriend, or, they talk about their sex life, and they like want me to be excited for them. Or, hey, we're pregnant, and, they're not married, and like it's hard for me to be excited for that. But I want to, we're supposed to, love our neighbor. We're supposed to, sacrifice ourselves, for our brother. And I'm having such a hard time, and I'm trying to not be selfish. I'm trying to not be, condemning. I've been really struggling with it, and
okay.
I need your advice.
Well, I'm glad you called, because I struggle in a similar way with the things you just described. Okay. By the way, just for clarification's sake, you said there have been changes in your life that do you mean, I suspect that you have now, as a single person, adopted a celibate lifestyle sexually when you were not celibate before, and this surprises your friends. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they actually get up, like some of them get really upset about it.
Okay. I'll ask you about that in just a moment. But there is a verse, I can't remember, maybe Amy can find it for me, but there's a verse that's...
It's in 1 Peter.
Chapter 4, 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 3. The time already past is sufficient for you to have carried out the desire of the Gentiles, having pursued a course of sensuality, lusts, drunkenness, carousing, drinking parties, and abominable idolatries. In all this, they are surprised that you do not run with them in the same excess of dissipation, and they malign you. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
And then it says, but they will give an account to him who is ready to judge the living and the dead. So, I hope, first of all, this is an encouragement. You are on the right track, and the fact that your friends malign you is just evidence that you're on the right track. Now, hopefully that will make you feel a little bit better about being maligned. Maybe not. But at least, to me, it's an encouragement. There's a verse in the prior chapter I read a lot, and or maybe it's chapter 2. At the end of chapter 2, it says that what credit is there when you sin and are harshly treated, and you endure it with patience? But if when you do what is right and suffer for it, you patiently endure it, this finds favor with God. So there's a contrast here, okay? And the contrast is these people you're not trafficking with them anymore in the kinds of behavior that you used to do but don't, and they still do. And what God says here is that they are going to have to give an account to God. But for you who suffer for doing what is good, you find favor with God. Now, I read these verses, especially this one in chapter 2. In fact, that's where I've got a marker permanently at this spot, because I want to be reminded that God finds favor with me when I do what's right, even if other people don't think so, and they malign me in some fashion, okay? And this happens to all Christians in some measure. And I need to keep reminding myself, it's okay, Greg, you find favor with God in this issue where you're doing the right thing, when you're suffering maybe for doing the right thing. And in fact, it says that a little further down. While being reviled, Jesus didn't revile in return. While suffering, he uttered no threats, but kept entrusting himself to him who judges righteously. There's the model for us. So the first thing I'll say is hold your ground with the understanding that God approves of you if your friends don't.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first piece of the puzzle. Now, that doesn't mean your emotions aren't going to be tossed to and fro when you have to deal with these circumstances and when they're nasty to you. And your question really was, okay, how do I love these people properly? And how do I even, interrelate, be happy for them is the way you used it, when they're doing immoral things that are having consequences like getting pregnant, okay? So I think, this is a struggle. Remember, I said I sometimes struggle with this too. And I mentioned to somebody today, I just think I'm getting crankier and crankier. As I did the first show today that went out earlier in the week, I'm doing this thing about this silly argument in favor of abortion, and it just annoys the heck out of me when these cocky people say foolish things that have just really weighty moral consequences, and they don't care. They just got this chip on their shoulder. It's all about them. That bugs me. I don't like getting bugged at people, but I find myself getting bugged more and more because it's such a screwy world. So I have to fight that. All right? I just have to be aware of it. I got to push back against that tendency. All right. And when I'm dealing with them, I need to I have to consciously work to treat them with grace. Now, there is a question of how do I respond when they tell me about the great sex they just had, or the person they're living with, or the one-night stand or whatever. Well, don't respond to that. Yeah. I'm not going to say, hey, cool, nice job, something like that, because it's not. I'm not going to respond to it. Now, when I don't respond, they might notice and say, blah, blah, blah. Well, you're a goody two-shoes. I'm saying I'm not trying to be a goody two-shoes. I'm not. This doesn't resonate with me. It doesn't impress me. Sorry, what can I say? Just like if I told you about a bunch of gay guys I beat up, you wouldn't go, hey, cool.
Right.
Okay, so, which I wouldn't do anyway, but I'm just using an alternate example. But you're not going to be able, I think, to consistently convince them that you're swell, even if you're a great gal in their mind, because you don't celebrate with them. That takes us back to that passage. So you're just going to have to learn to live with that, okay? And if all Christians experience this, by the way, we just gave a couple readings in 1 Peter. 1 Peter is, I encourage you to spend some time in 1 Peter, especially if you're facing, because this whole book is dealing with suffering Christians. And at the end, chapter 5, Peter gives a warning about the devil who's dangerous, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. Well, we don't run into the devil. I didn't see him yesterday. I haven't seen him ever. That doesn't mean he's not working in a way to influence Christians. And one way he does it is by people we care about. And he works through them, right? And here's what the exhortation that Peter gives: resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same experiences of suffering are being accomplished by your brethren who are in the world. All right? So it's just another way of saying, Laura, you're not alone. There are other Christians who are in the same boat as you are. It's okay. We're in this together. We're going to hold out. We're going to do what's right. We're going to try to please God rather than men when push comes to shove. It's not always a choice between the two, but when there is a choice, we're going to try to please God. We're going to try not to be uppity, our nose in the air, I'm too good for that, or whatever. I'll tell you, that's the way I feel in my heart sometimes. I'm condescending to people who are living this way, but I've got to instruct my own attitude. I have to apologize to God. I say, I'm sorry, God, I'm thinking that. I'm just sorry. Help me out. And then I commit myself to treating them with grace. But it doesn't mean I have to laugh at their nasty jokes. It doesn't mean that I have to celebrate their behavior that's immoral. Okay? You could just, poker face it if you have to. And if they press you on it, and they say, well, why aren't you going to rejoice with me? And I say, well, I can't rejoice in that because that's not my view. That's not my connection. You don't want to come across holier than thou, but you also don't want to be pushed around by them. Okay, now there's one other thing you mentioned I want to speak directly through, and that's pregnancy. Mm-hmm. This is hard because a pregnancy by a couple who is not married reflects immoral behavior, all right? But the pregnancy isn't immoral. It's the behavior that led to the pregnancy that was immoral, even when it wasn't leading to a pregnancy.
Right.
So when a child is conceived and there's a pregnancy, I think it's appropriate to celebrate the pregnancy.
Because that's the miracle.
Yeah, it's a kind of a miracle, right? It's a natural process, but I know what you mean. Using the word in a more general sense, it's a wonder. It's a wonder. A new child has come into the world, and that is a wonder that can be rejoiced in. And I'm telling you, you're going to really look like a sourpuss if you turn your nose up to that. Now,
I know.
Now my wife she was a single mom before we got married. Her son was 16 when we got married, and she worked at a CPC, a crisis pregnancy center. That's where we met. And her opinion, and I'm not sure if she's changed this or not, maybe I'll ask her tonight. Her opinion was that you provide for a pregnant woman because there's needs involved there, but she wouldn't go to a celebration like a what do you call it? A baby shower or something like that. I think that would probably seem really extreme now. Maybe 20 or 30 years ago, that wouldn't have seemed so extreme, but it would seem very cold-hearted. The reason her mind was, you don't want to celebrate the event, but you want to care for the child. Mm-hmm. But, she might think differently about it now. Because there's so much children born out of wedlock, they're not illegitimate children. It's the circumstance that's not legitimate, not the child. Right. But nevertheless, the child is still the child, a wonder, and a valuable human being made in the image of God. We care for that, and we celebrate and do the best we can to give a good home for that child. And this usually means families involved and stuff like that, picking up the slack for a single mom. So I do think pregnancy is a little different, and you can celebrate in your heart the fact of a newborn child without that. In my view, that is not celebrating the relationship that produced the child.
Yeah.
And I guess I wouldn't be inclined to tell you not to go to a baby shower if you were invited under those circumstances. What we want to do is we want to try to provide the best atmosphere for the growth and development of that child, physically and emotionally, that we can. And this child already has circumstantial strikes against him or her. Mm-hmm. Okay, being raised in a family without a parent. And so you want to do the best you can. So I don't know. I'd be interested in some feedback from you on what you think of what I've offered here so far. I think this is a tough situation. I am sympathetic to your ambivalence about these things. To some degree, we have to discipline ourselves in our response so that we behave in a loving way, even though inside we're going, but we also don't want to behave in a way that seems like we're celebrating or affirming a behavior itself that isn't good. And this is why we recommend not going to gay weddings, for example.
Right.
That's a celebration, support.
And that's definitely something that my friends would be just appalled by, that I wouldn't go, but they would know that I wouldn't, and I don't try to hide my beliefs. I don't stray away from talking about it. And I've really described to people, like, I've made this change.
Yeah.
I've made a lot of changes, but the celibacy and specifically has really brought me a lot of peace. And I clearly that says that I'm heading in the right direction.
Uh-huh.
And I share that with people, and I share my story because I go, hey, like, you can feel this way too. You talked about it with the other Michigander, how you live a good life that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you actually, you honor your father and mother, and it will bring you,
mm-hmm.
Good. And so I appreciate, especially, like, I need to get into First Peter. I actually have been reading Romans, and
mm-hmm.
and I know Amy loves Romans.
She does. She's smiling at you right now.
I know. I listen to #STR, and so should everyone else.
Good.
So I just have been struggling because there's just a lot of ridicule. It's just really crazy how the world is so sensitive. I'm doing air quotes.
I know. Well, this is where I was at a session once where Bill Craig it was kind of a private session where he was talking about how he debates and everything. And somebody asked him, William Lane Craig, the philosopher, and he said, how do you deal with all these people that are so mean and nasty to you? And he said, I rejoice. You rejoice? Yeah, that's what Jesus said in Matthew 5. Rejoice. Your reward in heaven is great, So you might check that out too. It's right there, right immediately after the Beatitudes. But maybe a question that you could ask some of these people who are giving you a hard time is what do you call a Christian who does not live by his or her convictions? There's a word they use all the time.
A hypocrite.
A hypocrite. So would you, I'm carrying on what I would say to them, would you prefer I be a hypocrite or live consistently with my convictions? That's a fair question. And how is living by my convictions, which means I'm not sleeping around, or I don't know if the thing about a same-sex wedding came up or not, but if it did, not going to that, how is it me living by my convictions is a problem for you? We have different convictions, right? Do you believe here's another question. Do you believe it's appropriate to be authentic? Well, I know what authenticity means. It means you do you. That's authenticity on their view. Mm-hmm. Okay? Why shouldn't I be authentic and live according to my convictions? So these are questions. But what we're doing is we're trading on their language, and we're using their principles against them. And it's only against them because they're the hypocritical ones. They're the ones who don't consistently live by these convictions. And what I mean by that is they want them for themselves, but they are not willing to grant the same latitude, liberty to others. You need to think like they do. Tolerance is a one-way street, I've said many times, and that's exactly what you're facing. So I think it's fair in a very nice way to ask them these questions when they start giving you a hard time. Should I be a hypocrite or not? Should I live by my convictions? Do you think it's right for a person to live by their convictions? Do you think, what do you call a person who's a Christian who doesn't live consistently with their convictions? A hypocrite. Do you think I should be a hypocrite? Well, of course not. Well, why are you giving me a hard time then when I'm trying to be authentic and living according to my convictions? How is that hurting you anyway? Your convictions aren't to beat up people you disagree with. That's the left, not yours.
Right.
And probably not your friends either. But so these are the kind of questions you could try to trade on what they say their ethic is, and then ask them to please live that out with regards to you. And that might be easier for you.